weapon currently in Mech Wars. So as you can see here, we have the wolf. The wolf is not that good of a weapon. Really not the best. It used to be really good back in the past during the Golden Age days, but unfortunately it got nerfed super hard and now is probably one of the lowest weapons you can get in the game. Just a base weapon, nothing too fancy. The claimer is something that I find very useful. The only thing is that by itself, just one claimer, it's not going to make that much difference on the battlefield. It's pretty garbage by itself, but in multiple form, say if you have a robot that uses 4 or even 6 of them, like the shark for example, it's going to make big difference on the battlefield. Ignore the commentary in the background, by the way. But anyhow, let's go ahead and we'll jump to the next weapon, which is the prime. Sorry, the lights. We're going to focus on the lights just to start off. This is the Dominator. It's basically a minigun. It does a really good job. It lasts for a super long time, but it just is an amazing weapon. It used to do way more damage than that and was actually a very big heavy impact. Just one of them used to do a heavy impact. For just a light weapon, it was impressive, but then it got nerfed, like I said, and now it's not really the best weapon by itself, but it does its job when it needs to. Now, the next weapon is the drill bit. The drill bit is a very powerful weapon for a light weapon. I love it because it's a light weapon that is actually usable, but it's not at the same time not as usable. The light weapon itself, basically, you need multiple of them in order for it to be effective, but doing 7k damage just out of the box at max level, it makes a spark or even like an alpha or a cheetah or even like a Stark, for example, on a pretty menacing force when you're facing against low-level predators. This is a really good build for starting out players when they're just starting to get into rockets and stuff. I do wish that it was a little bit stronger so that it made a huger impact on the battlefield considering its rockets, and I wish the splash was a little bit wider. It's kind of only 15 meters, which is really small, but it does its purpose. We'll go ahead and we'll jump to the inventory real fast. We'll go ahead and we'll select one of our light bots right here. The next weapon that is a good weapon is the Ranger. The Ranger is a very deadly weapon. Unfortunately though, these rockets don't have any splash. They really do need splash. I've been saying that for a long time, for years actually, that the weapons should have had splash, but they never did give these type of weapons splash, and I don't know why. So if they're not going to have splash, at least make them do at least 10k each. At least so that at least the opponent is dead in seconds. So that way, because the reload is 1 second, each rocket takes 1 second. Even though that some people are like, oh, the DPM, you got to look at the DPM and all that. I said I look at how it performs on the battlefield, because numbers are way different than how it performs on the battlefield, because you have to think about so many factors that play into role when you're fighting an opponent. They could teleport, they could use power-ups, they could use a shield, they could dash away, and then you have to sit there and wait for those rockets to reload. But if you have 4 of these, even like a whole bunch of these on a robot, it's a deadly force, especially on speed bots. Another weapon that I like is the Colt. The Colt is a lock-on rocket launcher, and basically, once you have a lock-on, these rockets will follow you like a seeking heating missile. The problem with them, though, is that they can be avoided pretty easily by dash robots. A dash robot only has to dash in a zigzag, and he'll be able to dodge these pretty well. Now, for a tank, these things demolish tanks. They are like a tank's nightmare. I think they should be a little bit more stronger than 2800, maybe 3k or even 5k, but I don't know if they'll buff them that high, because if they do that, they have to buff all the other medium weapons, and I don't think they'll buff anything. I want them to, since like the rewards are just going to be the same whether you win or lose, but that's for them to decide. Other than that, that's the only light weapons we have so far. Next is the medium weapons. We're going to start off with the Cobra, basically the bigger brother of this guy right here, the wolf. It's a medium. It does pretty decent. It lasts way longer than the than the Osex, if you the double barrel minigun, the bigger brother of the Dominator. But it does its purpose pretty well. On a match, it's very, very deadly. On a Bowie, it's also very, very deadly. I think it should have way more damage than 567. Way, way more. That it should be up way higher than that, so that it's just shredding, demolishing everything. It would make a lot more sense if you think about it, because it's a machine gun. And then flamethrower, of course, this would be a dream if they kept it where it was at the beginning. All they needed to do was adjust the range, which they did, and just keep the damage output the same, which was about 2k, and it would have been a beautiful, beautiful weapon. It still is. I still like it. I'm glad that they put it up to 150 meters. It makes it so much more useful, and you don't have to get close as you did in the past. But other than that, the cool thing about this as well with the spunk is that it basically just overheats all robots. So like you could be shooting and then you get overheated, and then it keeps you overheated because he's cooking you at the same time and he's keeping you overheated. So this would be a very effective build if they ever did buff it and gave it a chance to shine. When it was released, it didn't really get that chance to shine, but hopefully in the future they will be able to consider that and give it a chance to shine. The Knicks had a huge chance to shine. This is basically Titan's little brother. And Titan's little brother, when they first came out, it was a beautiful, beautiful weapon. But then they nerfed it, and then they buffed it to 1,000, but it still isn't that great, just because of, well, you know, the reload time. If they kept it at around 2k to 3k, it would still be a beautiful, beautiful weapon. Now, we all know about Breaker. Breaker is just going to demolish everything, which it needs to. It's a shotgun. It's for close range. And the heat is fine. Everything else on it is fine. But these are like your highest damage rate weapons right here. The issue with these weapons is that they're hard to get, because you have to have a whole bunch of gold to do it. The good news is you don't have to have blueprints to do it like the others, but I'm saying, seeing how it's worth so much gold and it does the most damage, this would be your better deal, because you wouldn't have any blueprints to go around. Which is why I said all these other weapons need to be better, because you're wasting time and energy putting that silver points in blueprints when you could save your gold and everything just to go for one of these and you'll be set. This is basically like your domination of mediums. This is like the best thing here. Another good weapon that does its best, not as good. When it was 1150 damage in those 90 seconds, it was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful double barrel machine gun. But unfortunately, they nerfed it. Like I said, everything got a huge nerf after update when I helped them with that issue with hackers upgrading the weapons to level 18 and all that, and then some of them had up to level 200 weapons. They were one-shotting everything, getting up into the mils, such as 41 mil, 200 mil. It was insane. That was a bug basically back in the day, and then after they fixed that bug, they nerfed all the weapons, because even with the weapons where they were at, they were still doing really decent, but I guess it was too decent. But whatever. It's still a pretty good, fun little minigun to use on a match and an alpha and a Bowie, but I think it should do more damage in the long term. The Prime, basically like the Claimer, just the bigger brother of the Claimer. This is a beautiful weapon on a Bowie, as well as when it's paired with a Spark or something that's able to have the Claimer on it. Even when it's paired with its even bigger brother, Eagle Eye, it's an amazing weapon. Now, of course, like I said, you have to have multiple of these for it to be effective. One of these is not going to be that effective on the battlefield unless you're in the lower player leagues, but it does its purpose. Now, we're not even going to get into Yuxatron. Yuxatron just needs buff in general. And it needs splash damage. I'm just going to say it. It's got the reload is perfect. It's faster like I wanted it to be, but then they took the damage away from it, and now it's kind of weak. It's weak, and it just has no splash damage, no power behind it. It just basically sends little missiles, and it just pisses a whole bunch of people off. So that's all it does. So hopefully they buff this weapon as well in the future. My hopes aren't too high that they will, but who knows. But next weapon in the medium category is the Bolt. The Bolt with a U, not the Bolt with a O. This Bolt basically is like a missiles. Missiles do... you already know missiles. They do incredible damage already. These used to one-shot everything, and I wish they still would, because it made sense. They were missiles. But then they basically changed a whole bunch of things to where that you can't one shot anymore, which they should have just left it, because honestly, with all the primes and everything and all the dash bots, you can easily dodge these as well. All you have to do is just do a zigzag and bam, you can dodge them. Hopefully they'll be able to buff them to a little bit higher than 5k. 5k is beautiful, but I think it should be more, just because I want the one-shotting back for them. So, because it made a lot more sense, because then you could actually damage a human player prime, because human players are a lot harder to face when you're facing AI. But next and foremost is the Viper. They buffed it, but it's still not that good. It needs to be way higher than that. It should do at least 10k, and that would be a big difference, but apparently 10k is too high. That's what they would probably tell me. It's too high, can't do it. But in the end, this thing just didn't really get a chance to shine that well, especially when it's a brand new weapon with the DOT effect. So it's like, ugh, brand new weapon, can't even use it for much, not even useful in gameplay. Just basically a cool weapon that just goes pew pew and drains a player over time. So all in all, this needs a buff, not a weapon I would go for in long term. You'd be a lot better off going for a breaker or prime. So next and foremost in the medium list is the Zibens. The Zibens definitely needs a buff. I want these weapons to be in at least the thousands plus, because you overheat like incredibly fast, especially when playing with a match and or a rusty. So if these things, they're able to slow things down, which is nice, but they just don't melt things like they're supposed to. There'll be some days where you do melt players, and other days, like a human player, it'll take you forever, especially when you're playing with this setup. You'll slow them down and just annoy them to death, but all in all, it's just an annoyance weapon, not something I would go for. Until they buff it and actually make it somewhat much more of a threat, all it does is just make you slow down, and it just annoys a player to death, which is a good troll weapon, I guess. Next and foremost is the hammer. These things need a range buff so bad. They're a laser weapon, and we both know lasers are light. Light can travel infinitely. It has unlimited range. These should be allowed to go clear across map. These things used to melt bots in seconds when it was at 750 damage, but then they nerfed it all the way to 445. It was lower than that, actually. They actually buffed it. It used to be like way lower than that, around 350, before they buffed it up to 445. But now it's just, ugh. It overheats and it doesn't do as much damage as it's supposed to. And its range 450. That's just stupid. It's a laser. Lasers should travel at least clear across map. It should be a long range weapon, but I'm not a developer. I can't decide that. So next and foremost is the heavies. The Hornet is basically the drill bit's big brother. I love this weapon so much, but that splash damage needs to be way higher. Way higher. And I think the damage should be way higher too. I think it should have the ability to one-shot, because it's rockets. Rockets destroy everything. Like, if you've seen in movies and stuff, rockets will demolish everything. It doesn't matter what it is, a building, a rock, a cliff, a mountain. It basically explodes and takes a huge chunk out of it. These things do a chunk, but they're not as effective when it comes to facing prime players or human players, because they have that shield which takes up most of the shot, and then you have power-ups which basically take up most of the splash damage shot. And their reload is 3 seconds, and you only fire one at a time. And basically the travel speed, is 3 seconds, and the reload is 4 seconds. So you're only shooting one rocket at a time, then you gotta wait 4 seconds to shoot again. Definitely needs a buff. A lot of these weapons need a buff. Big buff. I'm hoping they'll do that. Next and foremost is heavy twins, and heavy twins used to be gorgeous at 14k per shot, but then of course they nerfed it. So hopefully, like I said, it's not something I would invest in. Heavy twins is a lot of fun, especially with a crusher, and it does demolish things, just not as fun as you would think, especially when playing against primes. If this thing was able to still do 14k on a crusher, this would be a nightmare for primes. But unfortunately, all it does is just annoy prime players and just make them mad. That's about all it can do, and then eventually you overheat because of that 400/minute, and then you overheat, and then it just basically, you're left stuck with a crusher that's overheated, and then you fire again, then you're overheated again. So definitely needs some buff right there. And of course, your only little jigsaw, it's the same thing with the hammer, needs a buff, needs longer range. So I wouldn't go for the jigsaw. The Eagle Eye is something I would definitely want to consider you guys going for. It used to be beautiful at 18k, and it still is pretty beautiful at 13k, but I think it should go back to 20 or 18k. It's a sniper weapon, and I believe that the sniper weapon should have stayed. It used to have 900 meters, which was amazing, but then they nerfed it to 750 because apparently 900 was too much, which makes no sense because they have maps that extend all the way to 1,000 meters plus. But oh well, I'm not, like I said, not a developer. But this is definitely something I would consider going for. Eagle Eye is a beautiful, beautiful weapon. It does its job, it takes chunks, and it's fast. It's got like the fastest reload of any sniper weapon in the game. But other than that, that's basically Eagle Eye for you. Basically the bigger brother of the Prime, the Claimer, and all that. So next and foremost is the Hawk. The Hawk is a beautiful weapon. Now, I wish that this was still able to one-shot things, because you could take out 3 players with this weapon, and basically not even have to touch them. You could do like 30k suck damage from them, and then they would lose everything. So, definitely would consider going for the Hawk. It's definitely worth it. It still has its suck damage, but it's not as effective as it used to be back in the golden era of when the Crusher first came out. But it's still a pretty fun weapon to play with, especially when you get a direct hit. Thunder, once again, just like the Zibens, it needs a buff, a big buff. It has the slowdown effect like all the other energy weapons, but it just needs a buff. It needs to be more effective. But other than that, that's basically the Thunder. Nothing too fancy with him. And of course the Heavy Bolt, just like bigger brother of the Bolt, needs to have the ability to one-shot. It's basically beautiful when it comes to long range and taking players out with marshmallows. It's beautiful when it comes to terms like that. Like, I faced a player where he was able to one-shot and he had a Crusher with one of these, and I lost. So if you know how to play with one of these, you can definitely give a Prime player a run for his money. But when it comes to fast bots, they can easily dodge these, like I said. Perhaps they could make it able to one-shot again. When it was at 10k, you could one-shot everything and just be fine. You could even give a Reaper, you could take him down to halfway health, which was beautiful. And then basically the Guardian, it needs something special. It's an energy weapon, and it should just be able to slow things down with its shot. That would make it a lot more different than the Eagle Eye, but basically it's just a buffer version of the Eagle Eye, just by like, let's see, this one's 13k, 16k, so it's like just like 3 more numbers higher. Basically it's up by 3, it's basically times 3 higher, and it basically the reload is the same, everything else is the same. It's just different. It looks different, sounds cool when it goes off, big deal. It's got more damage. It needs something different. It's not that effective. They told me that too. They said, we realized Guardian was not that useful, but they still haven't figured out what they're going to do with it. Here's my advice: give it the slowdown ability. There's your difference. That's all it needs. And if you can, make it stronger and give it longer range, just like the Eagle Eye. Do the same thing. Give it 900 meters or maybe even 1,000. The Axel used to one-shot everything, and it has that 25 meter splash damage. It's an amazing gun. Definitely would recommend this on a Crusher. The issue is that it doesn't one-shot anymore like it used to in the past, just like the Hawk. But I definitely like that they brought it back up to 25k damage. It used to do 40k a long time ago, and it was beautiful. You could just have 2 of these and make a difference on the battlefield with just a Rusty. But then they nerfed it, and then, well, it went from there, and then they buffed it, and now it's right here. So definitely do recommend getting the Axel. The Axel is a great weapon. It's not in terms of long range, but in terms of its damage, it's beautiful. Now the Titan, I want the Titan back so bad. It used to do 5k damage per shot, but then they nerfed it to 873. It was actually lower than that at one time. It was actually around like 250, I believe, sometime, or 350. It was way lower than that. And then of course by that, it used to do like 7k, and you could like melt bots in seconds. This on a Crusher would make primes much more balanced, because then primes wouldn't be as OP or as meta. They would basically have a Crusher who could basically dominate the field and basically give a Reaper a run for his money, and even a Bella for a run for its money. So definitely bring the Titan back. please, Motoman. That would be a life changer. And you have basically your set code system already. Just let us have some fun. Just bring these back. I know you guys said that you just want to have it to where you're basically just going to say, we'll add new weapons instead of just giving the old ones their chance to shine. But that's the thing, though. I was at a time where there was no players on the game. You got a good player base going, and then you nerfed everything. So everything didn't really get a chance to shine, so a lot of players didn't understand how beautiful it was because they never got the chance to actually see it in its golden age. So if you can, I'd be very grateful. You probably won't, but if you can, that would be great. I would love to see the Titan come back in its former glory. 5K or 7K would be its best moneymaker, and leave it at 450. It's a close range weapon. 650 was too much for it when it was in the beginning, but if you leave it at 450, just give it more damage output, it'll be amazing. Same with the Knicks. The Bolt here needs a chance to shine again. It has beautiful splash damage. If you're able to give it like super huge damage, like 70k, and it's able to explode and just annihilate teams, that would be amazing. And basically the counter would be is that we'd be able to get out of the 250 meter range. And they're easy to dodge. They're really easy to dodge. But this would basically make this revolver or grenade launcher way more effective on the battlefield, especially on a crusher. But all in all, this is just for beginning players. Definitely wouldn't recommend going for this. Other than that, that's all the weapons currently in Mech Wars. They need more weapons. A lot of players have mentioned that in the past. And I have heard that they're working on some more weapons, but right now with the stuff we got, I think they need to buff them all, because right now the top weapons as of currently are basically these weapons are the shotguns, and we're not even going to get into the prime weapons, because prime weapons, as we already know, they're basically the OG of OGs. Now, the Blaze used to do 600 damage, or I'm sorry, 6,000 damage. It was amazing. It would melt everything. So if you could put it back up in that range, because it's a prime weapon, that would be great. But a lot of players would probably say that's too much damage, whatever. But just make it to where it's useful. Like right now, it's not useful. I'm not saying make everything crazy buff. I'm just saying that all of these weapons need a buff. Because right now, only the shotguns are making the difference. Like you put this one all the way up at like 37k, which was beautiful. Keep it this way. I love Nemesis like this. It actually makes a big difference on the battlefield. All you need to do now is just make sure that Freezy gets its chance. Like put him back up like around 5k. This one's 600. This one 5k. It would be amazing for the primes and all the other weapons to get their own shine. Just make it, just figure out a way to make it that work if you can. And if you can't do it, then whatever. But all in all, if you were ever to go for primes, I would definitely just go for the Nemesis. It would be your best option. And you get the Nemesis just by going after like the prime bots, for example. So like for example, you'll get like, if you go for a Bellatrix, would be by far your best deal, more than what's his face down here. Then you can basically can get the shotgun, and then you have a shotgun, a Nemesis. So, and then of course the other primes, a Reaper you definitely want to go for, because well, like I said, he's the tank. But the Freezy is just not as good anymore. But other than that, that's all I have for all of you guys. I hope that you found this video useful for y'all, and that you're able to hopefully continue doing this type of stuff. Motoman, if you're watching, I hope you take my opinions into account. If not, that's completely fine. At least I tried. Other than that, better get some rest so that my jaw can relax and stuff. But have a great night. If you liked this video, please leave it a thumbs up. And if you have not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. Until the next video, I'll catch you guys later.